It's here. We are redefining what it means to sit at the girls' table. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to The Girls Table, a podcast where women, founders, creators, and investors share their story. Today, I'm joined by Avery Akkineni, President of Vayner3. Before the launch of Vayner3, Avery spearheaded VaynerMedia's expansion into the Asia-Pacific region, building a team of 150 people and opening VaynerMedia's offices in Singapore, Bangkok, Tokyo, and Sydney. Avery spent her career early on at Google, working across search, YouTube, and DoubleClick. Avery, thank you so much for joining me today on The Girls Table. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm so happy to be here. I love your podcast and everything you do on Spaces and social media, and I was so honored when you invited me to join you.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. I feel like you're an inspiration, and I can't wait to dive into your whole story. What I decided to do this time, and specifically with you, is to let the listeners really understand you and who you are. I'm going to start with 10 questions and one-word answers of the responses. Sound good to you?
Yes, let's do it.
Okay, let's start. Who is the biggest inspiration in your life?
Oprah Winfrey.
If you had $500, would you put it into crypto or NFTs?
NFTs.
One adjective you would use to describe yourself?
Determined.
What is the most recent book you've read?
Just reread Thinking Fast and Slow, always a favorite.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Me too. Where do you want to go more than any other place in the world?
I'm really looking forward to, my husband and I have a trip to Chile in April for our anniversary, so Chile.
Oh my God, so fun. I've never been. What is your go-to pastime?
Go-to pastime, going to concerts.
Ooh, good one. What time do you usually wake up in the morning?
7.
What is your hidden talent?
Organization.
What is one thing you do almost every day that has helped you be the best version of yourself?
Create a to-do list.
Love it. Okay, want to start off with that, get us ready to go. Now you're probably energized or exhausted from all those questions. But I'm going to start off. You mentioned a book that you've currently read. Is there any specific book in your past that's really impacted your trajectory as a young adult?
Yeah, I'm actually sitting in my office and I'm looking at my bookshelf, and I'm a huge reader. I read all the time. I love audiobooks. I love paper books, not a real ebook reader. And every month I try to read one fiction book and one nonfiction book to kind of mix up my perspectives. I love reading fiction sort of for fun. I was just reading Boy Erased. And then I also love reading nonfiction books to sort of challenge my thinking and teach me new things, and also hear real true stories. So there are 1,000,001 books that kind of stand out to me as being important. One that I'll give a little plug for, because he's my boss, is Gary Vaynerchuk's books. I think have helped so many people, business executives and entrepreneurs and small business owners and people who need motivation, because Gary's books are really written from this perspective of practicality. So his latest book, 12 and a half ingredients for success. It's ingredients for something. I think was a really interesting book that's super practical, and I would recommend anyone who's listening to this check it out.
Awesome. I love that. So I've been really into fiction books. I go into waves. I'm all about self-help books. Let me read 20 of them, and now I'm all into fiction books. So I'm I need to go back. I like how you do it. One fiction, one nonfiction, get the entertaining versions, and also actually help yourself and learn something. So
yeah, you have to mix it up, right? Because fiction is for fun. It's a little bit of a beach read. Maybe you're just checking out something that's interesting. My team actually does this book club of the month. So I always want to encourage people at Vayner to read. So we reimburse them for one book. The book that they're reading right now is Brene Brown, Dare to Lead, which is also another favorite. Brene is such an inspiration and has so many practical, really helpful tips. So that's another one I'd throw out there.
Awesome. So when did you first encounter Gary Vee, and what ultimately led you to switch from Google to go work for his company?
Such a great question. So I first became aware of Gary in about 2015. I was working at Google, and we worked with so many different agencies across the board. And I first became aware of Gary through VaynerMedia. He was the CEO of VaynerMedia and really actively involved in kind of talking about the great work they were doing. So Gary came to speak at a Google event for Googlers in May 2015 or something. And that was my first time I heard him give an address to a large audience. And I was very impressed with his perspective and how differentiated what he was talking about was from what I heard from every other agency CEO and executive. Like Gary was, purple and everybody else was like shades of gray. It was so completely different. So I was inspired by what he said. And I was like, this guy might be insane, but he believes in it. And he had so much conviction. And I actually got to know the chief media officer of VaynerMedia, this guy named Jeff Nicholson, pretty well on like a personal level through one of my bosses at Google. Shout out to Chris Morgan. They were buddies. So through Chris Morgan, I got to know Jeff, and Jeff started to like recruit me. And then Gary started to recruit me as well for VaynerMedia. And they were like, you're going to learn more in 2 years of working for VaynerMedia than you are in 10 years of working for Google. You're a very little fish in a very big pond. And yes, you can be moving up the ladder quickly, but it's a very long ladder. And I think I was at a point in my career where I was so fortunate. I had been at Google since, shortly after the IPO. So the, stock price had gone up a ton. Products had expanded. The business had expanded so dramatically. And I was fortunate to be part of an amazing team that was moving really quickly and growing, but I still wanted sort of an opportunity to have more of a hands-on role. So I moved from being like basically a manager level at Google to working at VaynerMedia in the media department. And that was an interesting jump to make because it's very common that people go agency side to brand side. It's very, very, very uncommon that people go brand side to agency side, especially people who don't have agency experience. So I kind of like went against the curve, and everybody thought I was insane to leave a job at Google to work at VaynerMedia, which was like a community management agency at the time. But I thought it was going to be a great way for me to learn. And, almost 5 years later, I couldn't be more sure that I made the right decision.
And what has been your favorite part from switching to the Google, the dream job that kind of everybody hopes to get, to then switching to VaynerMedia, then eventually Vayner3?
Learning. I think that I'm a person who has a lot of intellectual curiosity, and I love being sort of challenged and stimulated to think about things in different ways. It's the reason I wanted to go open our offices in Asia. It's the reason I wanted to join Vayner, open our offices in Asia, start our Web3 presence, is because I think I really enjoy getting to solve a new challenge and learn about something that's completely different, and sort of stretch myself, because there's so much in this world to learn, right? And I know like a little tiny fraction of a percent of everything there is to know, but I love having the opportunity to learn and have that be a critical part of my sort of day to day. So I guess I like hard things.
Yeah, I worked in consulting, so I feel that, and now obviously with venture as well. So what was your first role when you came? Could you talk a little bit about that? But you were mentioning that you've traveled basically around the world, opening up different VaynerMedias, and then also what's your role today?
Yeah, so when I first joined VaynerMedia, I was a VP on the media side. So for those listeners who might not be familiar with the Vayner empire, most various companies are housed under VaynerX. And VaynerX is a modern day, communications engine. We have everything from a publisher and gallery media group, to a speaking agency with Vayner Speakers, sports agency with Vayner Sports, and a commerce agency with Vayner Commerce. But the really core business is VaynerMedia, and it's an advertising agency. So I was a VP on the media side, so really working on paid media strategies for our clients. And shortly after I joined, like within the first month, we ended up winning a really big account that's actually still the biggest account within the media side of Vayner. And we had this really big learning curve and sort of big moment for Vayner when we hired 50 different people to help staff up this account. We were figuring out things for the first time and really going from being like a small and medium agency to competing with the biggest agencies in the world. And that was really fun and exciting. So I was on the media side, and then the Asia thing I think was a little bit more sort of just personally driven. My husband's family is originally from India, and he was spending a lot of time in China for work, because he was working at a hedge fund at the time. And he was like, I think Asia's the future. And when I went and started spending more time there, both personally and professionally, I started to feel the same way, where I was like, we're not going to sell more 5x more consumer products next year in the United States, but like we might in Vietnam, we might in India. And rapid digitization of the society as it exists in sort of the APAC market was super interesting to me, especially Shanghai. I don't know if you've ever been there, but it just blows your mind. You're like, wow, they're
I have actually. It's crazy.
Exactly. And you're so inspired, right? Like, wow, I thought that Apple Pay was cool, and like I'm here like living my life in this super app. So anyway, I was really inspired by that, and I thought it would be a good opportunity for us to relocate there and just learn about this sort of new culture. And we're originally thinking Hong Kong, and I chatted to Gary about it, and we decided on Singapore. And then I went to open that up. And let me tell you, like, we didn't know what we didn't know. And it was a very steep learning curve. But within a couple of months, we were fortunate to have a couple partners, all local partners who sort of brought us on. And we were able to really grow that office and then subsequently grow from Singapore into Bangkok, into Tokyo, into Sydney, with some partners who saw the work that we were doing and felt the Vayner DNA kind of coming to that region. So that was a really fun experience. And I think the biggest challenge of that was definitely COVID, because we were on this like...
Yeah, when did you move over?
In July of 2019. So under a year later, we were dealing with COVID, which was... We're very much like an in-office kind of a culture, or we were before COVID, like, you know, people working together, like it's a creative agency. So we're brainstorming, we're whiteboarding, you know, we're having clients in, we're having late nights at the office. And then that all had to come just screeching to a halt, and we had to move to this wholly remote environment and experience. And that was definitely very challenging for us. But in typical Vayner fashion, we were able to understand like what messages were resonating with consumers and encourage our brand partners to really be there for their communities during that time. You know, not try to sell products, but rather be supportive and, you know, give encouraging messages and find ways to give back. We did a bunch of cool campaigns that were totally digital, like all shot virtually, whole nine. And then, you know, we just kept growing. And that was, you know, such an amazing experience to be a part of. And I'm so proud of where the team is now, which is now like closer to 300 people. So it's pretty amazing to see the growth there. And the Web3 thing, just to round out the point, so I drove the Asia thing. Gary definitely drove the Web3 thing, and I have to give him credit for identifying that trend so early on and recognizing that there was this groundswell of this sort of sub-community who's really interested in this idea of digital asset ownership and kind of crystallizing around NFTs. And he got really interested in it through CryptoPunks and then NBA Top Shot. And then we started paying a lot of attention to what was happening there. And, you know, understanding both the motivations for consumers who were participating there and also like what was driving people to that more philosophically, which I think is the really interesting part about Web3. And the more time we spent like digging in and learning and, you know, listening to Clubhouse and reading all the Discord stuff, the more we started to shape our perspective. And Gary really came up with this breakthrough idea to launch VFriends as an NFT collection first. And then from there, we really got hands-on learning with how do you do this, what matters, what's the right way to do it, what's the wrong way, what's too complicated. And then a month after that, we launched VaynerNFT, which was meant to help guide enterprises on that same journey that sort of Gary had been on as a creator and an entrepreneur.
Also, he used NFTs to actually sell out his book and become a bestseller, which was pretty crazy too. So he's definitely utilized NFTs, I feel like, to the max. And I definitely want to dive into that. Before I do, going back to you living abroad, you mentioned there were a lot of challenges you faced when you were there. Is there any specific day that you remember? I actually moved over to Australia in October of 2019, so right before COVID too.
Wow, we just missed each other.
Yeah, I was there for a year, but obviously it's hard. Like, it's a completely new culture, and I was in Asia, which is, I think, even a bigger learning curve. So any day that comes to mind when you really just struggled with that culture and really just when you noticed it the most?
Yeah, I think the day that will stand out to me always was the very first day I moved, July 1st, 2019, because we had been having some conversations with a partner, probably the number one prestige skincare brand in Asia. It's a Japanese brand. And I told them, like, yeah, like, let's meet the first week in July. And they were like, let's meet July 1st. And it was literally like the day I landed. And I was like, okay, sure. Because, like, keep in mind, I had nothing, like no clients. I had one person on my team. We had a WeWork with 4 desks. Like, were probably had no business even like talking to this client, but I was like, yeah, July 1st is great. So I went there for a meeting that started at like 9 a.m. I ended up staying there till 2 p.m. because we were brainstorming, like we had a meeting, we're like, hey, how can we work together? And they're like, why don't you come to this thing? Why don't you stay? Let's keep riffing and let's keep talking and join this other meeting. Let's talk about like how we're planning on using influencers here. And it was like, after I left their office that day, I was like, oh my God, this is going to be a huge thing. So it was just one of those like breakthrough moments that I went from being like, I hope I can get a client this year to, wow, this is going to be massive and we're going to build the agency around this partner, which is exactly what happened. So July 1st, fresh off the plane, didn't know anything, but was like, this is a huge opportunity and we're going to run at this with everything that we have. So that day stands out in my mind.
Oh my God. And now you're obviously the president of Vayner3. So was there a specific moment in crypto and Web3 that you were just like, wow, like I understand this and I want to run with it?
For me, I think it was towards the end of the VeeFriends mint out, because like kind of going up to it, Gary had such a vision and he had such clarity around what he was going to be doing. And a lot of people, even internally, were like, wow, that's pretty far-fetched, Gary. Like that's going to be pretty challenging to do. Because he was like, I'm going to turn these characters into books and toys and TV shows. And we're like, okay, but it is a doodle that we're trying to sell for $5,000 that was drawn by you with a Dutch auction and all these things. That was like, okay, it's pretty, it's out there. Let's give it a go, right? And then towards the end of it, it started to really click for me. Wow, like the potential here is immense, right? Like starting to develop the characters has over the past year and a half has been amazing to see. Actually, just yesterday, Gary had a tremendous announcement around these toys actually coming to life as plushies and vinyls at Macy's and the Toys R Us pop-in. But I think
that's awesome.
That like really, really clicked of the potential of this sort of cultural movement towards the end of the VeeFriends mint. Yes, I bought a few NFTs before I got it. I was interested, but that to me was like, wow, this is tremendous and profound.
And how long did it take for the VeeFriends to initially sell out?
About 3 weeks.
Okay, which is crazy when you think about it now. You're like, what do you mean? Like VeeFriends 2 sold out in a second. Everybody was buying on secondary. So very different times. So when
I tell that to people all the time, by the way, people are like, oh, my mint didn't sell out, or I didn't sell it in one day. I'm like, VeeFriends took almost a month. You know, people have this, you know, this idea of like immediate gratification is very common now in the NFT space because we have seen some things sell out so quickly. But that's not always the norm. If you look at any like actually physically produced product, like nothing sells out immediately. Right? Like it always takes a little bit of time. So I think that we'll start to see that kind of expectation pivot a little bit as we move from what's worked to date in NFT land, which is scarcity, into something like scale.
I think that's so true. And I think we're also going to be seeing membership cards a lot. So like a Soho House, they don't just sell out in one go. It's, okay, people buy it, people then hold it, or they could sell it on secondary. But it isn't this, okay, sell out, go, sell it, and make a couple $1,000s in 24 hours. So very different times right now. And I guess currently when individuals first enter Web3, what are 3 common mistakes that you see individuals making? 3
common mistakes I see individuals making is one, like not really doing their research. I think in this space, you know this, you've been to a lot of these panels. A lot of people like to talk and they haven't done their full research. So first, I think like do your own research is like, it's trite, but it's true. Second is don't be afraid to, once you have a perspective, to share it. Because I think a lot of times we're also everybody is like hopped up on the same sort of like repeating and retweeting versus coming up with like original thought. And I do encourage people to really shape their own perspectives versus just parrot what they hear from influencers and leaders. And I think the third thing that I think people should be wary of is over financialization. I think we've seen that, and I know you're at VC and I know everybody's trying to make money, but I think there's been an over financialization around NFTs in the past 18 months that I think we're going to see really cool off. So I always encourage people to look at the longer game versus just the immediate commercial opportunity.
And what about the people who are just starting out? They're just getting into the space. They're really excited about it. They have no clue where to start. Is there anywhere that you point them or kind of advice you have for those individuals?
Find their own, like there's so many educational resources right now. Even maybe somebody who's listening to this podcast is just dabbling and learning and listening first. There are so many amazing resources these days. So take the time to find what resonates for you. Maybe it's a podcast, maybe it's a video, maybe it's reading a blog, but take the time to find what resonates for you in your tone. I think a lot of the original sort of educational literature was very crypto bro language. And in the last 6 months, we've seen that really diversify. Folks like, you know, you're very involved with the BFF team and what they're building. They put out a lot of amazing content and educational resources. Tuttle Tribe, there's so much now that is like really helpful for people who are looking to get in the space. So find what resonates with you. And then secondarily, be a participant before you go into being a creator or founder. I think a lot of people want to jump right into that like leadership role. The best way to learn is to be a good community member. And I think that solid community members, and you're a great example of this as well, right? Like you've been hosting spaces and you've been, being a great community member for a lot of the groups that you're a part of for quite some time. And I think that the people who understand the culture and are of it are then often the best people to sort of emerge as leaders.
It's so funny because really recently, actually, Drew asked me, he's like, I'm shocked you didn't start your own NFT project. I was like, for me, it wasn't about that. I wasn't trying to make a couple $100s and build this massive empire. I thought about it. I think when everybody first enters the space, they're like, let me start my own project and let me do it. But that's not what it was about. For me, it was about so much more. It was about understanding crypto, understanding blockchain. Did you ever see yourself starting your own project, or eventually do you want to start your own project or want to start your own company?
It's a great question. It's something that people ask me all the time. Like every day, someone's like, when are you going to leave Gary and start your own company? Honestly, I think that knowing your strengths as an individual is so important. And to me, I don't want to be in the spotlight the same way someone like Gary like thrives in that. That's just like not necessarily what I'm looking for and not what I'm the best at. So what I think I would be great at is like a number two on a project, or like the person who makes it all happen, sort of like working with someone. I'd like to be part of maybe a collective that does something. And when I see the right opportunity, like we have so many ideas, I can't wait to jump on it. But I think it'll be less about me as a person, and more about what the idea is and me kind of supporting that.
And I think people need to like internally look at themselves and be self-aware, as you just mentioned, of what is their strength. And this space, we've seen it go in a whirlwind. It's like been a roller coaster of the highs of highs. Obviously, we're hitting in kind of low of low, hopefully going up soon. But where do you see the future of NFTs?
The future of NFTs will be ubiquitous. I think NFTs will be part of our digital experience, embedded in so many different ways. As people's digital identity that goes with them across the internet and beyond. I do think that right now we focus a lot on the tech and the how, and I think in the future we'll be focused more on the what, right? Like what is the benefit here for consumers, and like why should they want this? We also like to hype things up a lot in this space where like everyone like looks forward to this thing or that thing, and I think oftentimes that ends in disappointment, which isn't like the best situation. We like to announce an announcement. I think the future of this will be, it's sort of invisible and empowering a lot of consumers' digital experiences. I think about people like my mom and my dad, and of course they have NFTs because they want to support me, but I want them to want to have digital assets and to experience blockchain technology. And I feel like in the future, they won't even know that they are. Think about turning on like a light bulb. I don't exactly know how it works. I know when I click the switch, it goes on. And I think the same thing will start to happen with Web3 technology, where you click the button and it works, and it won't be as sort of technically complex and laden as it is right now.
And is there any companies, obviously you're working with so many right now, that you're actually doing this for? Because I think what comes to my mind is Starbucks, but I think they did their PR a little wrong, but I'm not a PR expert. But they went out and they said, hey, we're utilizing NFTs. And it's like, no, wait a second. Like, you're utilizing a blockchain, but most people shouldn't even know. And I feel like they got such a backlash because they went out and said they were utilizing NFTs, but they didn't really need to. It's the same reward system that they're doing, except now they're doing it in the background through the blockchain.
Yeah, I think that's more the announcement type of thing, right? Because we don't know yet. Starbucks hasn't launched, and they're actually not a Vayner client, so I can't remark too much on their strategy, except to say I can't wait to see what they roll out. I can't wait for more enterprises to play in this space in a visible way. I think it's, that's how all boats are going to rise, is having more enterprises adopt this technology and bring it to their user bases. A couple of companies that I can say I think are doing really interesting stuff. I'll throw out three that are our Vayner partners, because got to give them some love. So just yesterday or 2 days ago, we launched something with Dapper and the NFL and Bud Light. This is a pick'em game where you can pick which team is going to win, and you basically pick your team can, it's an NFT, and then you pick which like kind of game is going to win, and if you get more streaks, you get more prizes, which I think is a really fun thing. Like everyone is used to this idea of pick 'em, and they're used to this idea of streaks, and enabling this through NFT technology is really cool because now people can sell their cans, buy in if they missed a game, that kind of fun thing. I think Dapper has done a really good job of making this technology accessible to a wider, more mainstream audience who might not be, crypto enabled yet or crypto native yet. Second company I'll say is DraftKings. So DraftKings has a really cool product called Rainmakers, and the DraftKings audience is already there's into sports betting. It's a sports betting platform. So there's a heavy crossover with NFT interests. And I think that product is very cool and really interesting. And the third I'll say is Coinbase. I think Coinbase continues to lead the market in terms of making crypto mainstream. And their DApp wallet is really easy to use, doesn't require, you could sign in with MetaMask, but they also have a really nice like integration for folks so they don't have to leave the Coinbase app. I think that is probably the most underrated feature in Web3 is their DApp browser that exists within the Coinbase app. So I think Coinbase continues to build really interesting products that will be ushering in the next generation of users who are sort of crypto enabled.
Those are some great use cases. We're also investors in Dapper Labs, so naturally I'm a fan of that one as well. Does the market scare you at all? And are you seeing any kind of effects of the market on Vayner today?
No, the market doesn't scare me at all, right? Like we just talked about COVID. When I think about where like starting an agency in Singapore and 6 months later there being COVID, that scared me. I was like, oh my gosh, like I have no idea what's coming next. And that was a totally unprecedented thing. Crypto market, of course it's going to be volatile. And I've been investing in crypto for like the last 6 years. So it's gone up, it's gone down, it's gone basically to zero. Crypto has died a million times over. So that doesn't scare me at all. In fact, I view this as an opportunity to decommercialize some of that has powered the NFT space, has powered the first hype cycle of NFTs. And if you look back at early internet companies, it took Microsoft 15 years to get back to their valuation after that sort of initial bubble burst, right? It came back and Microsoft was a great business, but those prices were crazy high. I think we're going to see a little bit of that, right? In the next couple of months and years, to be honest, in the Web3 space. But what we're also going to see sort of, there are a lot of pets.coms, if you will, in the NFT space in the last year, which it's, .com's a great business. That's an important thing. Is pets.com like the one? I think we're seeing some parallels there. I also think that it's more an opportunity for enterprises to play in this without feeling like they're part of a speculative investing arena, which is not a place most public companies want to play.
Yeah. So what's next for you? What's next for Vayner? What's coming up?
So we are very excited about something we're putting together at Art Basel, which will be a great moment to celebrate some of the work that we're doing, some of our favorite partners and friends. So I'm excited for that. We have several exciting things happening this sort of Q4. Everything from experiences to thought leadership pieces. We've got a cool 2023 trends report that the team is working on right now, to a couple of exciting drops that I think are breakthrough and our use cases people haven't seen before. And just like anything, some are going to hit and some won't, but we're excited to be kind of along this journey and working with fantastic partners, both clients and sort of technical partners, to try to prove new use cases for Web3 and bring more people into the space.
And one last thing I want to ask about is the Vayner VCon. It was so successful. You obviously played a big part in that, but it was one of my favorite conferences. I feel like, apart from me walking up and down 200 times, but I love walking, so no problems there. How did you guys do that, and what's in the future for the next VCon?
VCon 2023 is going to be amazing. Andy and team have already been planning some really cool stuff. So keep your ears peeled for an announcement coming pretty soon on dates and location. So for one, I think VCon, huge credit to Gary for having just such a vision around what this experience would be like. And you were there in person. You saw all these like nods to Gary, everything from the selfie station, which was hugely popular with his fans, to the Coinbase Creator Lounge, to the Ferris wheel, to the lawn games, just all of Gary's favorite things kind of in one place. So shout out to Gary for the vision, and shout out to the team who made it possible. Zach Nadler, who runs Vayner Speakers, who you probably got to know along the way, sort of booked all of that, and Andy's team for handling a lot of the social and the planning, and Maha, who's from Minneapolis, and just the whole team that kind of pulled it off, the production agency. Really an incredible crew who made it happen. And even I think the first day was hailing. That was a little crazy. As soon as that ended,
Insane.
It was party time. Yeah.
I forgot about that. I was in my hotel room and I was like, I brought nothing warm and I don't want to look outside because I actually have nothing except for like a sweatshirt. So it ended up turning out, it was amazing. I unfortunately did not get a picture with Gary. I think every single time I was somewhere, I heard from somebody, oh, Gary was just there. I'm like, I'm not even going to try. I heard the line to get a picture with him was 3 hours. So absolutely insane. To end it, Avery, is there any last minute advice that you have for the people listening today?
Listen to more of your stuff. And my second piece of advice would be to follow all the Vayner entities, follow VFriends, follow Vayner3, follow 1:37 p.m. And of course, Gary V. We try to put out a lot of interesting content. And the best way to keep up with what we're up to is following along and joining our communities.
I would also say follow Avery on Twitter. She's under Avery_Akkineni. You should definitely follow her. But thank you so much, Avery, for coming on today and sharing your story.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for having me.
Bye.